Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Brian DeLuca. I am the co-founder and CEO of Reporting Hub, and today is a really exciting day. It is our very first webinar we're doing, and we're very excited to have you here. I'm going to do a few introductions. I've got some really special guests I want to bring on for our very first webinar, and I've also got some really exciting news I want to share with everybody. Before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's tuning in. We've had an absolutely amazing response to this webinar. As of the start of this, we've had 400 people sign up on LinkedIn alone to take part in this webinar. So really excited by that turnout, and just thank you to everybody who's tuning in. And those numbers don't include YouTube. So we don't know how many people are on YouTube right now, but we've had absolutely amazing success with the number of people that have shown interest in this webinar. So thank you first and foremost. Okay, let's jump into the agenda for today. So this is our very first webinar, like I said. We plan on doing more of these in the new year. We plan on creating more content and educational and awareness content for our audience so that everyone can do more with Power BI. So like I said, my name is Brian DeLuca. I am with the Reporting Hub. The Reporting Hub is a white label, turnkey, plug and play business intelligence platform that works with Power BI and uses Power BI embedded to do that. And we're a solution accelerator with the Microsoft team within the Power BI embedded ecosystem. That's a little bit about myself. So the webinar itself coincides actually with the launch of our brand new customer community. So that's the big exciting news that I wanted to share as well as part of this. As of this morning, we just launched our brand new customer community. We have customers in over 20 different countries all around the world. And our customers have expressed interest to connect with one another and share ideas and request features and plus up features and be able to connect and shape the future of what we're doing at the Reporting Hub. So really excited to announce that as of this morning, we are now live with our customer community, and all of our customers and our trialing users have received an email from us to sign up and join the community. So if you're interested in joining the community, you can start a trial with us, and you can get access to the community that way. But we're really excited to kick that off and have you help shape what we're doing. Next up, just some housekeeping. We're going to have questions coming in given we have such a large audience today, we'll do our best to answer questions. We've got some really heavy hitters from Microsoft here today, so I'm sure you've got a bunch of questions you want to ask these guys. We will do our best to answer those, and we have a couple team members in the background. We have Renata, who's helping produce this. We also have Jesse from our customer success and development side that are going to do their best to answer questions on the live chat. We'll take some questions in directly to have answered live, but if we don't get to your question, feel free. We'll try to reach out to you after, and feel free to reach out to us, and we'll try to get that answered after the webinar today. Very good. So let's get on with introducing our guests. So I'm very excited. These two gentlemen are near and dear to the Reporting Hub. The first is Ofer Ashkenazi. He is the program principal I'll let him introduce himself. He'll give a better job introducing himself. The principal program manager with Power BI Embedded. And then we also have Alon Baram who's the principal product manager with the Power BI Embedded team. Hope I got that right, guys. Both these folks are very. We work a lot with these guys. We're very ingrained with the Microsoft team to make sure we're putting forward the best solution possible. So without further ado, why don't you guys take a minute, introduce yourself, starting with you, Ofer.
Thank you, Brian. So my name is Ofer Ashkenazi. I'm a principal program manager that is focusing on customer engagement for Power BI Embedded. As part of this has been running for the last 5 years, this Power BI Embedded Go Big program. And in the last year, back in February, we launched the solution accelerator for Power BI Embedded, and Brian was mentioning, and Reporting Hub is one of those solutions in the program. Alon, please.
Hi, my name is Alon. I'm a product manager for Power BI Embedded, also for other things, but Power BI Embedded is my main thing. And I'm here to hear any needs, anything that you need from us, from the product. We'll consider to get into the product in the next planning session.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So again, just to reiterate to the audience today, these are two very senior executive level guys from Microsoft within the Power BI Embedded team. these are the guys you want to ask your questions to. These are the guys that are going to have answers and can share some insights with us today. So yeah, really excited to have them join us. I'm going to go over a bit of a high-level agenda overview. I'm going to hand it off to Offer, and he's going to walk through some of his stuff, and then we'll go from there. So the agenda for today is pretty straightforward. It's going to be a little bit high level. We're going to start with an introduction to Fabric, Microsoft Fabric. We're going to view this through the lens specifically of Power BI and Power BI Embedded. So we're not talking about Fabric, in its entirety. We're looking at it kind of from a thinking of with the mindset of Power BI Embedded and Power BI. We're going to talk about how Microsoft or Offer and Alon are going to talk about how Fabric can help empower your business intelligence strategy and your solutions, and what's kind of coming and what's new that can help in that. I'm going to then take over and talk a little bit about what the Reporting Hub does, show a brief demo for everyone if you haven't seen it before, if you're new to us. And then we're going to talk about how the combination of Microsoft Fabric and the Reporting Hub can really transition your BI strategy into that modern age and really bring it to the next level in terms of scalability and productizing and potentially even monetizing your Power BI assets to your organization, your customer base. So these are all things we want to talk about, and we can talk about different use cases, and throughout we'll be answering questions as you have them. And we'll also have some time at the end for some Q&A as well if we have any time left over. So on that note, I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a quick minute here while we get that sorted out. And then I'm going to hand it off to Offer to talk about Microsoft Fabric.
Yep. Thank you, Brian. So I think it's the previous slide that you want to start with.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. We're live here.
So folks, first of all, let's introduce Microsoft Fabric, which is a new platform in which Power BI is one of the workloads. We'll talk about this. This is a new platform that is out there in the market for about a year. GA'd in about a year ago, and the slides that I'm presenting here are the evolution, represent the evolution that we announced at Ignite, the recent conference that we had. So first of all, in terms of the platform itself, there's some principles here that are portrayed in this particular slide. Obviously, it's a mission critical foundation at the bottom that is going to be common across the different workloads, which you will mention. But take a look at the pillars on top of it. It's an AI-powered data platform, which means you get the complete data platform, where Power BI is typically dealt with the visualization at the end of the data at the end of the stack, at the top of the stack. Here we're talking about the complete data stack, that you can start by ingesting some data from somewhere into a Delta Lake, transforming the data and so forth, and it's a completely unified SaaS experience. Unlike in the past, where you had to cobble together and integrate between different services, and you had to import and export from each of the services to the next one, this is a complete unified SaaS platform that it's easier to get started with, that is secure and governed in a completely universal way across the different workloads. Second pillar is about open AI and AI-ready data lake. The notion here is that we have sort of started to support some industry standard. Think about Delta Parquet and some other standards that are now supported out of the box. So all of these workloads that you'll see in the next slide support the Delta Parquet format. So you don't need to do the import and export from one to the other in order to use those. And you bring just any kind of processing with a particular workload onto the data instead of having to push and replicate the data all over. It also has this multi-cloud capabilities where you can mirror your data from other cloud platforms into the data lake, or we call it the one lake, and it's open at every tier. So it's whether you're using it just at the data layer. We have data standards that are across the industry, but also we have APIs for the workloads themselves to be able to access. Now, on top of this, you've got something that Power BI has always been excelling with, which is the ability to have the business users empowered directly. So the integration with Office, integration with other functionality that is coming from Microsoft 365 Microsoft 360, is out of the box built into the platform, just like it was for Power BI. If we don't have any questions, let's move to the next slide. So this slide talks about the actual workloads that are coming. And again, there's some new announcement that we've made at Ignite. First of all, notice at the bottom of the stack, we have Purview, which is a data governance tool or service. There's the OneLake that I mentioned. That's the data storage with the standards that we mentioned. There's obviously AI powered powering across the platform for the different workloads. And notice here, first of all, the one on the left one is on the left called Data Factory, is allowing you to do the data ingestion and basic transformation of the data as you bring it in. Then we've sort of augmented or rather converged all of our analytics services. In previous versions, you may have seen data engineering, data warehouse, data science. Now they're all part of our analytics workload. Those include, by the way, Spark clusters that you can run against your data. There's now a new, we just announced it as a public preview. These are operational databases, no longer just the analytics, not just the data warehouse. Even SQL, Azure SQL DB now, and other operational databases are now part of the Fabric platform. There's the real-time intelligence that we announced its public preview back at the Build conference in the spring, and now we have announced the general availability of real-time intelligence. Think about things such as Data Explorer and others, Data Hub, and all sorts of other capabilities in terms of real-time that we created a unified workload for. Obviously, there's Power BI, of which this platform taken many of the concepts. And then we have two more new things. One is industry solution that Microsoft itself provides sort of templates for particular industry implementations on top of Fabric, plus partner workloads, where as an ISV, you can bring your own workload, your own IP into Fabric. So we have a special SDK to let you become an external third-party tool, part of this platform called the Microsoft Fabric. Do we have any questions before we dive into the embedding experience for Power BI?
I'm just going to ask a couple questions and make a couple points. I think maybe on the industry solutions and the partner workloads. I want to come back to that offer in a few minutes when we talk about the combination of Fabric and Reporting Hub and how we can with that combination we're really accelerating that. And what I really want to make real for the audience is what are some use cases? What are some ways that you as an organization today can take advantage of these things and actually create a solution and go to market with that solution, and leveraging Fabric as, of course, the Microsoft backend to do all these things? I think for me, that's probably the most exciting thing in terms of the enablement of organizations who might not have typically fit within an ISV, independent software vendor framework. They may be, consulting organizations, or they may be organizations who are just delivering a value service around analytics. Well, those organizations can become ISVs by taking advantage of these tools and these platforms. And I think that's the part that I really want to make sure hits home with the audience today, because that's a game changer for me with what Fabric is doing. Do you want to maybe elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so definitely it's about, remember, it's always been on Microsoft vision to democratize technologies. Instead of having to go into the nitty-gritty details and be an expert on each of these, we're trying, this is the sort of SaaSifying the experiences, making sure that it's easier to provision. We have this slogan of 5 by 5, 5 minutes to sign up, or 5 seconds to sign up, 5 minutes to wow. And that's the important thing, is that you can get started with as little amount of friction as possible. But it's beyond that. If you're familiar with Power BI, it was just a visualization. We had many connectors, hundreds literally of connectors to all sorts of data sources and all sorts of other BI stack, where you were doing the transformation and the preparation of the data. Here we're saying, hey, you can now, especially if you're looking into doing the ELT rather than ETL, that is dumping your data into the lake and then starting to doing the transformation on the data in the lake without having to replicate it too much, right? Move it around. So that notion, if you're into this kind of ELT rather than ETL mechanism, using the data lake or Delta Lake, using Delta Parquet these days, then Fabric offers an amazing offering for you, which is also very cost effective with all the rest of the integration to the rest of the platform of Microsoft that we're talking about. It means that you can focus on your IP specific to an industry or specific to a use case rather than dealing with the details of how to implement it technically. I hope that answered the question, Brian.
Yeah, totally. And we'll talk more about that as we go there. But to me, that's a key focus area. I see a question from Dominic, and I was actually going to get there, so he beat me to it. So we're talking about obviously Microsoft Fabric today. We're talking about Power BI Embedded. We're talking about the Reporting Hub. You know, Reporting Hub's a plug and play solution that uses Power BI Embedded. Now, Power BI Embedded is of course much more grand than that. You can build your own solutions with Power BI Embedded. You can, it's really just an SDK, series of APIs from Microsoft. So, whether you use the Reporting Hub or not, the Power BI Embedded, you can do a lot with it. Now, there's a couple key things right now, and Dominic is asking a question, and there's really two things that we're hearing from our customers kind of on a regular basis. I was going to bring it up anyways. So it's really, there's two kind of things that are, aren't quite ready yet with Power BI Embedded. And I'd like some, your thoughts, your insights, your take on it. First being direct lake functionality using Power BI Embedded. And then second being the Copilot within Power BI for the end user. So let's start with direct lake, because I know that's a bit of a limitation right now. And then I also want to shift and talk about the limitation with Copilot within Power BI Embedded right now, because those are two hot topics that are, people want to know about.
Yeah, so we'll talk in the next slide about specific scenario we called embed for customers that need service principal access and has some other functionality in terms of authentication authorization. But just switching back to the previous slide, Brian, I want to make sure that everybody realizes that when you see here Power BI as a workload within Fabric, you can still use the existing Power BI APIs and SDK that existed even before Fabric. So we're treated as if you're connecting just to Power BI. So those still work, still exist. So if you're trying to use the functionality that existed even before Fabric, all of that still exists, still backward compatible. It's all the same. Now, in terms of new functionality, like the direct lake connectivity to the Delta Parquet files in one lake, this is where we need to go into the nuances of the next slide, please, Brian. This is where it really depends on which scenario you are. And I'll go over the scenarios, but just high level. If you're in the embed for your organization or embedding, secure embed, we'll talk about the details in a second, you're good to go. It's only about service principal support that my colleague Alon has some news to tell.
No, what I wanted to say that embedded using direct lake is going to be available beginning of January with service principal and fixed identity. And it will include the full documentation and a blog post. So it's coming right after the holidays.
Okay, so that's specifically about the scenario that I'll walk you through in a second. But it means that there's no problem today to still use the import mode from your Delta Parquet files from your One Lake. We'll get into those details. But first of all, let me walk you through this different scenarios that we have that we support in Embedding, and then I'll talk about how does it connect with the Reporting Hub. What you see on the left-hand side, there are three options. There are either embedding or publishing to web. These are out-of-the-box things that don't really need any kind of coding. It's just from the Power BI/Fabric portal, when you're on a report, there's an option on the file option to say, hey, publish to web. And you don't want to do it unless you want to give access anonymously to anybody on the web to that particular report and the data it brings. The other two, which are secure embed, assume that the user is authenticated by Entra ID, what we used to call the Azure Active Directory, and the user has license, and the user has a role on the workspace. And those are really for internal users or those guests that you bring into Power BI or to Fabric through B2B. Those are limited in the functionality. And again, you don't need to do any much coding because you can generate the iframe with a configuration to which particular report you're referring to, on which particular workspace, which particular page you want to land in, and even filters that you could pass in the URL. But that's it. And everything over there generated automatically for you. And you just take that iframe with the configuration and you plug it in your website or in SharePoint Online. These are very basic rudimentary stuff. When we talk about embedding, we really literally talk about the right-hand stuff, what you can do with the SDKs. And this is where it diverges into two different scenarios. One is embed for your organization. The other one is embed for your customers, also known as user owns data on the left-hand side, app owns data on the right-hand side. The embed for organization use the same mechanism of authenticating the end user through Entra ID. So you either have to be a native user of Entra ID or a B2B guest. The user needs to be licensed, could be a freemium license, but have the capacity of the workspace need to be licensed. And you need to provide the user a role, at least as a viewer on the workspace. So it works with the same authentication mechanism. This is why it's mostly useful for internal users or just B2B guests. On the right-hand side, you get much more flexibility, and it's much more relevant for ISVs that have their own authentication mechanism that doesn't necessarily integrate with Entra ID. And you want to have a finer granularity on who gets access to which particular Power BI items within a workspace. So the way it works is you have to have a backend to your front end of web front end. So that backend is going to be using a configuration database that maintains information about multi-tenancy. If you're trying to support multiple customers, each one is your application tenant, then you need to allow to know which user belongs to which particular tenant, and maybe that tenant has its own workspace. Then you have the user permission. If you want to allow specific users to access only specific reports, then you need to specify that. You need to cache the IDs of the Power BI artifacts to know which reports is going to be accessible to which user, and then user profile, allowing you to implement things like personal bookmarks. Even though Power BI does not know the identity, because you know that, you can literally take a bookmark created through an API and save it with the notion, oh, this is relevant for this user that has access to this report. All of that information needs to be kept in a configuration database, the code for maintaining that database and reading it in order to create what we call embed token that are in lieu of an access token, because the user will not connect and log into Entra ID. The user will log in with your application authentication mechanism, and then the authorization will be by the application backend based on the configuration database, only providing an embed token with the minimum amount of access to the specific items needed from Power BI delivered to the client, and then the client using it in order to render the report. I know it's a lot of information, but it's much more complex, but it gives a much more flexibility. And that's exactly where Power BI Embedded and Reporting Hub integrate. That's where Brian is going to add some more details.
That's what I was going to say. And the good news is, if you don't want to have to do all that yourself, that's what the Reporting Hub solves within this right-hand scenario. And I'll get into more of that in just a little bit. We do have a couple questions I want to tackle here. Thank you for that background offer. I know we get a lot of questions around understanding, there's Power BI Embedded isn't just one thing, and it's a lot of different things depending on your use case, depending on what you're trying to do with it. And I think a lot of people get confused by it. So that was a good overview of the different scenarios that exist within Power BI Embedded and when you might want to use them. The question we have here, I'm going to pop it up on the screen. I use Azure Logic Apps and Azure Table Storage instead of Fabric, but Power BI is my main use. Would you say Fabric would give better performance in this case? Any thoughts on that?
Well, performance is always a tricky thing. You need to check it specifically against your particular data source, and obviously the implementation of your semantic model with different measures may affect performance, so you can't really answer that out of the box like that. But I would say that if you want to continue using your Azure tables, and you're not necessarily going to use the ELT rather than ETL process, or you're not interested in terms of getting your data into Delta Parquet, then I don't see too much of benefit that you get right now out of the box. But obviously, you can test it out and then figure it out for yourself, whether you're getting better performance. If you're trying to do today access to the Azure tables without doing import, then definitely doing it with direct lake connectivity would give you better performance, just logically. And also, if you're doing it in import mode, it's going to be even better performance in generally speaking. So I'm not sure exactly how to respond to this question.
I know performance questions are nearly impossible to answer. There's so many different factors, and you know we get that all the time as well. So it's a tricky one for sure. I've got another question here regarding Azure Monitor, and I know this is one of those things that when Fabric came out, it lacked a little bit of the equivalent monitoring that people were used to with the Power BI embedded A SKUs, as an example. So I think this is a good chance to make. I know it's come a long way with the app, with the Power BI app monitoring app. But why don't you guys answer this one?
So first of all, in terms of licensing for Power BI embedding, we typically move customers to use, especially obviously if you're doing embed for customers, to use a capacity licensing rather than per user. If you're in the embed for organization, you can still use a per user license, but with capacity, you get much more. And you get more resources, you get more functionality. So with capacities, we have 3 capacities. One of them we've already started phasing out. That's the premium capacity. So unless you have an EA agreement existing with Microsoft, you cannot create a new premium capacity. You can only create FSKU capacity, Fabric capacity, which is basically a superset of the functionality you can get with premium, with the one exception of auto scaling that I can go into the details. But the Power BI embedded for Azure, it's a SKU. We call it the A SKU. It's been around for many years. We don't have any plan right now of deprecating it. And basically, this particular A SKU is available only for embed for customer. It cannot be used for other purposes. Where the FSKU can combine, where you can have internal users going through the Fabric portal and doing their activity within the Fabric portal. It can also be used for embedding for either of the use cases, where A SKUs can only be used in production for embedding for customers. In terms of monitoring, we're using the regular monitoring functionality of Power BI, right? All of the capabilities of monitoring, these are being extended these days. I believe we've announced some of these at Ignite. You can go and look at the sessions we presented there. But on top of this, keep in mind that there are different nuances on how you do the auto scaling between premium, FSKU, and A SKU. It has to do more about whether you need to create some script and have a very specific triggering of when you're going to switch to a higher SKU or go back to a lower SKU versus adding some vCores into your capacity. I'm not going to go into the details here right now, but there's some nuances. But other than that, the embedding functionality is the same. All the functionality you get is available on all the 3 capacities.
And from the, specifically to the question, the monitoring capabilities are right. Being improved all the time. The app, the available Power BI, the Fabric monitoring app in Power BI has actually been made a lot better over even the last few months. And I think you'll probably see.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the people are referring to the capacity metrics app, which allows you to monitor your capacity and its workload and throttling and so forth. It's the same across all 3 capacity types. It doesn't really matter which capacity type you're using. It's the same, and we've improved it quite dramatically. So if you're not on the latest version, I strongly recommend for you to go on to the latest version.
No, but they offer Azure SKUs, A SKUs still have shoebox based.
Yeah, so what I said is the auto scaling with the A SKUs, the Power BI embedded on Azure, you have the metrics that we emit from that capacity that allow you to figure out whenever we start throttling the users, as well as you can figure out what's the CPU utilization of your capacity to allow you to preemptively, for example, move to a higher SKU. That sort of, we call it the shoebox metrics. It's not available on the FSKUs yet. It is available only on the A SKUs. So if you're doing embed for customers, the A SKU right now give you this extra
Yeah, it
feature.
gives you a bit better visibility.
Yeah, I want to add that we are aware of this gap, and we are working with the relevant team to close these gaps. So, and we'll, as soon as we have an ETA, we'll publish it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Alon. I see a question here as well regarding licensing, and I'll tackle this one because I know the answer to this one. And this one, actually, we get this question a lot with people that are interested in the reporting hub, and they a lot of times they think they need an F64 license because that F64. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the F64 applies in like this scenario where you need to have a minimum F64, but when you're using the embed for your customers app owns data scenario, that doesn't apply. You can use an F2 in that scenario. You don't need an F64. So and that's, I do see that as a really common point of confusion with licensing. People assume that to use embedded, you need F64. That's not the case. What you need to understand is the different types of embedding that offer walkthrough and what licensing applies where. And in the case of the reporting hub and embedded for your customer scenario, that limitation does not exist. You can use an F2 in that case. And we have many customers that use F2s.
Just to add some more context, the notion of going into F64, which was the equivalent of P1, was if you wanted for your regular users that are signing up, that are logging into the portal, into the Power BI/Fabric portal, for those folks, if you didn't want to buy per user license, you could have them using what we call the business user license, which is free, assign that per user, but then you're just buying the F64, right? So that's in the case where you're logging into the portal, not using any of the embedding. And as Brian said, the embedding has a different rules in terms of you don't need to buy the per user license.
Very good. All right. Well, on that note, let's shift over to understanding the relationship of Reporting Hub within the kind of Fabric, the world of Fabric and Azure. So Offer did a great job at Alon explaining kind of the back end of embedded, understanding what we're doing from an app owns data scenario for embedded with Reporting Hub. But I wanted to take a step back and say, okay, well, let's look at it in the greater context of Fabric and Azure. What exactly does the Reporting Hub or any embedded analytics solution, what is it doing for you? And the idea that I want to focus on is what we're calling SaaSifying Power BI. Now, what we mean by that is you're taking your Power BI, your reports, your dashboards, your patch data reports, your data visualizations, and you're actually taking them and productizing or building a solution around that and making that available via a SaaS platform. So that's what we mean by SaaSifying Power BI. It's taking it, packaging it, and delivering it to your external audience in a way that you can control it and then bring that to market. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to charge for it. It could be a value-added service you're doing, but in a lot of cases, there's an opportunity to monetize that and create a business around that. And we have lots of customers that are doing just that. So that's when I say SaaSify Power BI, that's what we mean. And Reporting Hub is part of the Solution Accelerator program at Microsoft. And what that really means is, if you want to do Power BI embedded yourself and you want to build a solution, leveraging the SDK from Microsoft, you can absolutely do that, of course. But, you're looking at a month-long project, and then there's maintenance and everything on top of that. It really kind of comes down to a build-buy scenario. And Reporting Hub is giving you a plug-and-play turnkey, no-code solution to take advantage of that. And that's really what the Reporting Hub is doing. Now, if you look at it in context of Fabric, this really becomes your data foundation. What are you're ingesting your data, you're transforming that data, you're modeling it, you're building your processes around your data within OneLake, and you're taking advantage of all these available workloads, these unified workloads within Fabric to streamline your processes. And that's all, of course, happening within your overall Azure environment. And the neat thing about the Reporting Hub is think of it like an extension. It's an extension of those workloads to where you can take that back end, apply a user front end to that, a front end SaaS-based application where your users can actually interact with that Power BI content. That's not necessarily tied to app.powerbi.com. It's not necessarily tied to Microsoft Entra ID authentication. You can separate it from that, and you can then share that content externally to users outside of your organization, outside of your Microsoft tenant, and that really allows you to productize that offering and bring that to market. And that's really what the benefit here is in that scenario. So I'm hoping this visualization kind of shows that. And why we have this Azure overlay here is the reporting hub is actually deployed within your environment. So it's physically installed within, the four walls of your Azure cloud. So it's behind your firewalls. Your data never leaves your environment. So everything is still contained, and organizations can maintain their data sovereignty because that data never leaves. The reporting hub is actually installed. So it creates a really, really neat way to productize or SaaSify your Power BI reporting and data visualizations in a way that's completely controlled by your organization. White label with your branding, your customization, your app URL. It really is a complete solution which allows you to go to market. And when I say go to market, again, I don't necessarily mean you're selling a report as an example. You could be going to market with an external customer base, and maybe that's a value added service you want to make available to your customers. And maybe you have 10,000 customers in multiple different geographies all around the world. Well, that's actually a little tricky to do with Power BI as it stands. So a solution leveraging Power BI Embedded really opens the doors to how you can do that and scale the delivery of that content in a much more seamless, simplified, centralized manner. And it's all within your Microsoft Fabric and all within your Microsoft Azure. So that is kind of the idea. Think of the reporting hub as an extension of your Fabric workloads and services to get that content in your users' hands.
Brian, before you move, I think even here, you may have dropped the embedded, which is important. You meant to say SaaSified Power BI Embedded, because Power BI Embedded, specifically embedding for your customers, is a PaaS service that you need to build the code on top. And so SaaSifying the Power BI Embedded, that's what the reporting hub is doing.
Yes, of course. It's leveraging. I mean, when we say Power BI here, we're referring really to the output of Power BI, the report visualization. The good thank you offer for the clarification. We're not talking about SaaSifying the service of Power BI. We're talking about SaaSifying the Power BI report, data visualization. The insight that you've created as an organization, it's really SaaSifying that insight. Power BI is the tool which allows you to package that insight and deliver it. So when we say Power BI, that's the context in which we mean it. Thank you for that clarification, Offer. And Offer and I always keep each other honest with how we refer to things. That's one of the good things about our relationship.
Another context to keep in mind is that it needs to be in the context of a particular app. So when you're using embedding for customers, you're saying, I have an app, it has some data, now I need to serve it next to that app. So what Reporting Hub provides you with is this analytics model out of the box. And Brian said a month. I've seen situations where it took customers 6 months in order to implement with lots of advanced features, just like Reporting Hub is providing. My guess is it would take you more than a year to implement the same functionality.
Yeah, I think it's a minimum 6 months, more realistically 9 to 12 months to implement your own scenario. And then there's of course the ongoing, maintenance after that. This again, in the context of, using the reporting hub as an extension of your Fabric workloads, an extension of your data architecture. Really, if you look at this diagram has been used, throughout kind of Microsoft documentation. We're just piggybacking on Microsoft's documentation here, and it kind of Microsoft's documentation stops here in terms of the idea of a prepackaged solution. This is where you would use Power BI Embedded to either build your own or use a solution accelerator like the Reporting Hub. So of course, in this use case, we're showcasing the Reporting Hub here, but this could be, an embedded solution you build yourself. This could be, any type of Power BI embedded solution. But the idea here is that we are talking about, from a Reporting Hub concept, we're talking about the delivery and distribution part of your overall end-to-end architecture. So you're still leveraging, your Fabric and your OneLake and all the workloads that are available to you in Microsoft Fabric, all those unified workloads to productize a solution. And this is where I want to go back to the point Offer made earlier around the idea of, I'll go back a few slides here. This here of the industry solutions and the partner workloads. This concept here is where this can all be, productized by your organization within Fabric. And then coupling that with a distribution platform like the Reporting Hub, that's what allows you to SaaSify and go to market with a solution. And that's what allows you to create and potentially become an independent software vendor or an ISV, because you're actually productizing your data backend using Fabric, and you're productizing the front end, the user front end, in terms of delivering that to your customer base. And that the combination of that and with the Fabric backend and Reporting Hub gives you that complete end-to-end solution. So that's, again, going back to that point earlier, that's what's really exciting about what Fabric is doing, is it's giving you that platform and allowing you to productize that within Fabric. Did you want to add anything on that point, Offer?
No, I think you made a good job describing that. It's not just the data, obviously, it's also some IP to process the data and so forth that you're SaaSifying. And when we're saying SaaSifying, it's really about making sure that you can start much quicker with actual business users already using it, rather than having too many developers, having to be involved in order to get to production.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a bit of a change in the way you think about your data as an organization and the way you think about Power BI. It's changing the dynamic a little bit. Power BI is we're not talking necessarily in the context of being an organizational reporting tool. We're talking about being a platform in which you can enable, the SaaSification of insights and data visualizations beyond your organization to your customer base and to external users. And that's really where, when you think about kind of a modern data strategy and extending the capabilities of what Power BI can do using Power BI Embedded, this is where it gets really exciting, because you can start thinking about different use cases for Power BI. And we've got a lot of great customer use case examples where our customers have gone to market with, a SaaS-based analytics solution, and they've had tremendous success all over the world delivering these analytics solutions. So it's a really it's a new age for what you can do with your data analytics and your data insights with these kind of off-the-shelf products now. I want to just checking the question board here. Copilot on top of OneLake. So let's talk about that briefly before I jump into a quick demo of the Reporting Hub. So earlier we talked about that's a known limitation right now with Embedded. So the idea of Copilot within Power BI right now exists today. You can use Power BI, your end user can go in and, query your Power BI report and get a Copilot response to that. You can build a visualization using Copilot and Power BI in the Power BI service today. Right now, that is not supported by Power BI Embedded. So that's probably one of the biggest gaps, I would say, in the Power BI Embedded ecosystem right now. So I want to throw that back at Alon and Offer to say, what's going on there at Microsoft? I know that's probably the question we get asked the most is, when's Copilot coming? When's it going to be supported by Embedded? So I'm putting you on the spot here, guys. So
no worries. Go ahead, Alon.
Okay, so we are considering that right now for the next semester plan, and as soon as we have any news or ETA, we'll of course update everyone. We know we're aware that this is the biggest gap, so it's going to be implemented. We just don't have an ETA yet.
And I know Offer, I will pass this on to the audience as well, because Offer has asked me to pass this on to our customer base. If this is something you want, and I know it is, be vocal about it. Go on to the Fabric community. I'm sure there's many suggestions already on there. So plus up a request, a feature request within the Fabric community asking for that feature. I can speak personally that Microsoft actually really does listen to these things, and they do genuinely want to hear from customers, and they do genuinely listen to what customers want. There obviously has to be a critical mass behind that of enough people wanting it. But if we look at the Reporting Hub audience and the audience of those today alone, if we can be vocal and we can ask Microsoft through the available Microsoft channels for feature requests, and we can say, hey, we want this feature supported by Power BI Embedded, that will only help and expedite things. So that's my ask to everybody listening today.
I'm going to add that Copilot has I think about 8 or 9 different functionalities that you can choose from. I'm assuming that people have different preferences. So whatever you can be as specific as possible, what would be the most important thing for you to adopt from Copilot, that would be useful. There's one potential thing that might be available today, which is the ability to have synonyms recommended by Copilot that are then affecting your schema of synonyms, which you don't need Copilot when you're running it. So it's just an editing experience that you can use the FSQs outside of embedded, but then you'll have the schema available for you with the right synonym. That's the only sort of sliver of Copilot functionality available for you today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point to offer. Like, you can take advantage of the Q&A, an enhanced Q&A experience today, leveraging Copilot. So for those that want to still, be able to tie in some degree of AI and Copilot into your Power BI solution using Power BI Embedded, you can do that with the Q&A function.
But it's important before you go into your demo, Brian, to keep remind everybody that the reason we push forward a Fabric is because of all these AI, this Copilot functionality, capabilities, experiences that it highlights, that all of a sudden you can be much more productive. You can be even creative with the data. And that's something that is really revolutionizing the BI analytics stack these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, very good. I'm now going to show just a very quick 3-minute pre-recorded demo, and I'm going to talk through it just to showcase, high level, this is what Power BI Embedded can look like if you're using a tool like the Reporting Hub. And again, the Reporting Hub is a plug-and-play no-code solution for Power BI Embedded. So we're using the back-end APIs from Microsoft. We're using the available, everything that's available from Microsoft to really create the best, SaaS offering we can. With the available SDK from within the Power BI Embedded ecosystem. So that's what we're going to show here. And the idea here is just really, it's meant to be a bit of a thought starter. I'll go full screen here. So Reporting Hub, it separates the delivery from Power BI. So this is your app. This app is your URL. Your customers are going to your defined app where it's white labeled. You can drop your logos, change your colors. You can create co-branded customer tenants where a customer goes in, and in this example, it's a Mercedes tenant. So if your customer's Mercedes can go into their own secure custom branded environment all within your Reporting Hub, which you control. You can control your colors and your fonts and the entire layout and branding experience, and it's 100% white label. This is just a brief example of kind of a navigation menu where you control how you organize your content and who sees what, completely permissioned, completely secure. Here's an embedded Power BI report, fully functioning, Power BI experience with filters and full screen and share and export, all the features that you would expect and demand within your Power BI example, we can support. And we do things like scheduled emails and bookmarks where you can push content to your users, which is a really nice value-added service that the Reporting Hub provides. And again, from a managing your content perspective, you don't need to be a developer. It's a no code. You don't need to worry about things like embed codes. The Reporting Hub is seamlessly integrated with your Power BI environment. So you can grant it permissions. And when you're embedding content, you're just saying, hey, I want to embed a report from this workspace. I want to choose these tabs that I want to embed. You can add an icon to customize your content based on what it is, and you can have complete control over that when you surface it through the Reporting Hub in a way that's a lot simpler and more streamlined that you're going to get than maybe within the Power BI service, and a more owned experience where you as an organization can own that user experience completely from end to end. Here's an example where we're allowed to actually pick the individual report tabs or pages that are in our report, and we have different customizations offer where if I want to put a filter pane or a title, I can put that. From permissioning, it's going to be tied to your Entra ID. So it's going to be tied or to Auth0 or Okta. It's not necessarily has to be tied to Entra ID. You can tie it to any IDP that we support all the major ones, Okta, Auth0, OpenID. Entra ID B2C. We support all these different authentication types so that you don't have to necessarily use Entra ID if you don't want to for your solution. We also allow you to configure your capacity. So we'll trigger your capacity on and off based on your users actually engaging with your content. So this allows you to right size your spend in Azure without having to code it yourself. Now, these are things you can do if you go into the Azure portal today and write a script to trigger on and off your capacity based on usage. But with the Reporting Hub, we're giving you a plug and play solution so you don't need to worry about doing that. You can just simply go in, click, I want this to time out after 5 minutes, and you get that benefit. So that was just a really quick demo of the Reporting Hub, just to give everybody a high-level overview of what Power BI Embedded can look like if you're using a tool like the Reporting Hub. And again, this was one example, and we have a lot of different ones to different theming and different examples that you could use, but that was just one that we wanted to showcase for today. We've got about 10 minutes left. Go ahead, Offer.
Before you go back to the questions, I'm not sure if we saw, maybe it's part of the demo, I'm not sure that I saw it, your functionality of doing scheduling of report printouts, which is a very popular thing. You cannot get out of the box with Power BI embedding. You have just the SDK and APIs, and you have actually SaaSified that experience.
Yeah.
You want to go over it?
Yeah, I don't actually show it here, but I do briefly touch on it. And thanks for pointing that out, Offer, because this is a really it's an extremely popular feature of ours. Probably it's one of the most popular features we have. And what this enables you to do is, if you're an administrator of your Reporting Hub and you're kind of managing the content for, let's say, your customer base, and you have several customers, and the Reporting Hub is a self-serve platform just like Power BI is, and we all know, those of us in the BI world, we all know that not everybody is great with self-serve. They might not go and actually access that report. And what a scheduled email allows you to do, it allows you to push that content out to your user, where you as an administrator can create a scheduled job and will actually export that report based on the parameters that you've set. So I can say, with these filters applied, or only this one page, not all 5 pages, and I can identify which specific users I'd like to email this to. And it's a white labeled email, so it's going to come from the SMTP that you set up. It's going to come with your logo in the email. It's a completely branded experience. And when that email lands in the user's inbox, it will actually have the report attached to it and a hyperlink to actually drive them back to your app with the interactive report. And it's a really great way to drive engagement with your audience, because we all know they're not necessarily going to come on their own. We have to kind of push them to use that content. And scheduled email is a great way to actually drive that engagement. Thanks for asking me to focus on that, Offer, because it is a really popular feature. We've got about 8 minutes left here, so I want to open it up to questions right now. I see a question here. Does it support alerts and email summaries? Good question. So we do have I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and just go back to, we already did. Thanks, Renata. We support alerts in the sense that we have a notification tool built into the platform, which as an administrator, you can push alerts to your audience. So, and those can be targeted alerts. So let's say, you've got your C-suite or a specific customer where you've published a new report out to that one customer, but not all of your customers. Well, you can target a notification in app to that specific user group or customer base and push a notification out that says, hey, we've published a new report, go check it out. And that will come in app, kind of in the top. There'll be a little bell icon that pops up and says, hey, you've got a notification. The user will go on and say, hey, okay, I've got a new report. Cool, click, and then they can open that report. So it's not necessarily an automated alert, but you do have a way to push alerts to your audience. And what I can say, one of the things we're excited about, it is on our roadmap. We're not sure where it's going to land in terms of when and timing. So again, I'm going to bring it back to our community that we just launched. We're looking for suggestions. We want people to give us, what's your priorities in terms of features? Because one of the things we want to do with that alert functionality, notification functionality, is we want to tie in Data Activator to that. And Data Activator is that, it's built within the Fabric workloads, and that Data Activator is that automated trigger based on your semantic models in Power BI that you can go and set an automated trigger based on your data. And where we eventually want to go with that is we want that automated trigger to feed the Reporting Hub notification portal, so you can actually set all of your trigger-based notifications within Data Activator and surface those to your users through the notification panel of the Reporting Hub. So again, it doesn't exist today. It's on a roadmap, but I would love to hear back from our community in terms of how important is that to you? Is that something you'd really want? Do you want us to bump that up our roadmap? Would be what we're looking for.
Just to
yeah,
remind
so
people, data activator is part of the real-time intelligence. That's the new name for the workload. Real-time
yeah.
workload.
And the clarification question was, if a sales threshold is exceeded. So that's exactly what I'm referring to with Data Activator. So Data Activator would allow you to set those thresholds. So if this sales target is exceeded, it will trigger a Data Activator notification. And then where we want to go is that will actually push to the notification engine within the reporting hub. So right now we don't have that connection in place. I've actually chatted with Will Thompson, who heads up that group at Microsoft, or he's certainly a big part of that group. And that is something we're exploring to bring in the future. Can we? I'm going to put this on the board. I'm going to let the Alon and Offer answer this one. Can we connect streaming data into Power BI in real time?
Yes, you can. So you can do it even before Fabric. You could do it. You could have a data explorer that could bring data in real time, and then it's a data source that Power BI can consume, and definitely it becomes even more seamless with Fabric. Basically, that's what it is. So Data Explorer, which is part of the real-time intelligence workload, is fully supported in Power BI. What it means is if you want Power BI to show always the most refreshed data, you want to set so that the Power BI page refreshes every second automatically. So every second it would go and query the KQL, the Kusto query language data set that is the Data Explorer sort of data source that Power BI accesses. Yeah.
And how about Power BI Embedded? So that's all fine and good for Power BI.
Power BI Embedded uses all of the functionality in terms of the data access that Power BI has. So everything there would work as well with Power BI Embedded.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, I wanted to just draw that point because I know that can be a point of confusion sometimes. Power BI versus Power BI Embedded, real-time streaming is often a point of confusion. Okay, do we have any other questions coming in? Right now, I'm just going to quickly go through. I think we've answered all the questions so far. So unless another question comes in the last few minutes here, I'm just gonna say a few final words, and we will sign off. And again, if you have any questions that you maybe didn't want to bring up on the live stream, or they come to you after, by all means, please reach out to us at the Reporting Hub. Maybe or not, if you could throw my email even up on the screen here. I just put her on the spot there. This way you can email me directly, and I can certainly consolidate some of that and work with Offer and Alon to get some answers. I don't want to inundate Offer and Alon, but I want to be able to be the point person to potentially ask questions and get questions answered after the fact. So there's my email. If you want to email me after, happy to answer any questions you might have. But really, we want to say thank you. I want to give a very big thank you to Offer and Alon for joining us today. Super grateful for you to be a part of this and help create awareness in the world of what we can be doing and how we can extend the benefits of Power BI using Power BI Embedded. I know we all agree on that being a big deal and a big push, how we really want people understanding that. So thank you everybody. Thanks to Alon, thanks to Offer, and thanks to everybody, and look out for more of these events from us in the future.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.